Now, this is breaking news. This is literally hot off the press, and you can read about this if you go to Building a Better World News or BAB News, BABWnews.com. Huge Saturn discovery shocks scientists, and it confirms what I've been thinking all along. Here we go. The incredibly close picture of a massive hurricane-like storm taken from just over 1,900 miles away from Saturn's surface has been overshadowed by a new discovery about the planet's rings. So what is that new discovery, folks? Well, that new discovery is they found nothing in between the actual rings of Saturn. No matter, nothing, nada, blank. The rings of Saturn, the ring makers of Saturn, there's something to it. There's some type of vibrational frequency or harmonious energies, whether for good or bad, that are being emitted through the entire solar system from that one planet. Saturn is such a mysterious planet, and a lot of people say it was once a star. Maybe the rings around Saturn somehow prevent I don't know, it's like some type of prison matrix or something. Maybe it's a construction of conscious imprisonment. Now, look at the Greek mythos of Kronos. Talk about scary. I mean, you're talking a Greek god that there's multiple images. I was thinking about sharing some of those on the program, they're from Greek era, yet they're still so twisted that I don't even want to put them on the screen. I mean, Kronos is like eating his child. There's one where he's biting his head off, and it's just twisted. And then you've got the cult of Saturn, the black cube, and I haven't read David Icke's work about the rings of Saturn. However, I've heard people talk about it, and there might be something to it. That's one thing I like to do my own research before I start doing a whole bunch of research of specific authors, because that way I can either confirm or, I confirm either way if what they're saying is legit based upon my own research. And I don't agree with everybody 100% of the time ever. I will tell you this, though. David Icke has written about things in the past that have shook me to the core. Like if you've ever read his book, The Biggest Secret, that was one of the books that came out in the late 90s, when the internet wasn't as poppin' as it is now. And a lot of the dots that he connected there with religion and mystery schools and the dark cabal and what goes on the underbelly of many of these factions that pretend to be for the better of mankind, it's scary. And if you are religious, if you are very strong in your faith, then I maybe wouldn't even recommend reading that book because it might shake your faith to the core. As a matter of fact, when I read that book, it kind of broke me out of the paradigm of the religious paradigm, being stuck in specific dogmatic rituals that have been going on for a couple thousand years now and that have been manipulated for control. Especially if you read through the Holy Bible, you can actually, if you look at it from a different perspective, you can see the kind of mind control tactics, the neurolinguistic programming, the hypnosis, it's just fascinating how much has been integrated into those texts to control the masses. So, I certainly feel there's a higher power, multiple higher powers than myself, and divine providence, the creation of everything, the ultimate. I just can't explain it with my monkey mind. I will say that I also feel there's demigods, and there's beings and entities out there that can actually control the masses in this physical matter oftentimes in different realms, in a different vibrational frequency, because that different realm is still connected to this realm. It's just a different pattern. It's a different vibrational frequency, a different essence that if you know how to latch onto that, then you can kind of see it. Kind of like when we were reading the Emerald Tablets, I'm saying we because you guys were with me, when the Emerald Tablets were read, it talked about how Thoth was describing the Dark Brotherhood and the Archonic serpents, the Archon serpent beings that you couldn't see with the physical eyes, yet with specific sounds you could actually see them. And it's kind of like the film They Live with Rodney Piper. Isn't it weird how shortly after he came out with exposing that film, he passed? Also could have been, maybe he was doing a lot of steroids back in the day with WWF and stuff, or WWE, the Wrestling Federation. Those guys are juiced. Still, I appreciate the fact that he came out and exposed the agenda, and the fact that he played that pivotal part, and incredible. So let me get back to let me read this to you. NASA scientists were absolutely floored by the latest data sent back by the Cassini spacecraft from Saturn. Data that will cause them to totally rethink how they understand the gas giant's mysterious rings. As Cassini took a dive through the gaps between the rings of the second largest planet in our solar system, they expected to find some sort of particles or other matter, but instead they found absolutely nothing. They found nada. The Cassini took 2 passes between the huge gaps in the rings of Saturn, but were amazed to find that there was absolutely nothing there, not even the faintest hint of some kind of matter or space dust, indicating that the area between the rings and Saturn is a whole big nothing. The rings, on the other hand, are made up of fast-moving particles of ice and other space debris. That's awesome. And that also makes me think of all the hexagon shapes that you see on the moons of Saturn that orbit the inner rings. How about Saturn itself with the giant hexagon? It's fascinating. What does it mean? And then you can get into the electric universe theory by Wal Thornhill. Very smart guy. I had him on the show before. Once again, I don't agree with everything he says. I do agree with a lot of what he says. And when you look at cymatics and you look at how dust can form into specific beautiful patterns based upon sounds that are created that cause a vibrational frequency to change that pattern, it's amazing. But there was this one part, if you go to Wikipedia, where it shows where cymatics actually created this golf ball effect, where it looked like the top of a golf ball. Well, I've seen that same effect on satellite images of Mars and the moon, where people have speculated that they were actually artificial structures, when in reality it could have just been some vibrational pattern from an explosion in space that caused that to happen, some type of electronic interference. Now, with that said, maybe these beings have learned. I would say that these beings, these demigods, maybe the Anunnaki, Enki, Enlil, Thor, Thoth, those guys, those beings of incredible power, I'll bet you they know how to tap onto these frequencies, right? They can say stuff and just create it. Matter of fact, yes, that's right, you, ladies and gentlemen, learn the true keys to the true Kabbalah, and you can change matter with your voice. It's incredible. You can, once you get to that point, wow, I'm not there yet, or am I? Imagine all of us at one time tapping into a specific sound, a specific frequency, a healing, harmonious property that resonates at a particular hertz, maybe 418, somewhere around there. And we all did it at the same time. It'd be electric. It would be magnifying. It would be amazing. It'd be supercalifragilisticexpialidocious cool. And we should do that. We should test that out one of these days. We'll do the Thoth chant that was in the Hermes Trismegistus book in the Nag Hammadi treatise, because after I did that little chant at the end, great response. A lot of people said that they actually saw things, they went into trances, and pretty cool. We'll just emit that energy through the ether of the universe and permeate it into this beautiful archetype of awesomeness. So, the rings of Saturn, the ring makers of Saturn. You guys need to check out the ring makers of Saturn, because the ring makers of Saturn are these huge, they look like these huge rod-shaped ships, almost like galactic Pong, that you can see, Hubble telescope infrared images, that these things look like they're changing the rings up, like they're fixing the rings or doing whatever they need to do to keep those rings in a harmonious state. Yet, I wonder if whoever is controlling those rings is putting some type of like negative energy. Think about that for a second. I just came up with a really good idea for a new 21st century weapon via vibrations. Have you heard of these? There's these bugs. They're called Akita bugs or something like that. I can't remember the name of them exactly. But there's an experiment done. I'll pull this up, where a certain vibration was emitted through crystals and sounds, and all these bugs started popping up. It's like out of nowhere. And the scientific community did their best to debunk it, said, oh, well, they were just eggs, and that vibration frequency caused them to form all of a sudden. And you can actually read about this stuff. I think there's a website called rexresearch.com. No affiliation with me, but beautiful name, by the way. Ding dong. So imagine being able to create bugs via crystal, via sound, creating life. with the science experiment that you won't even need $1,000 to do, maybe $100. We should do that experiment on air, shouldn't we? I need to get some people smarter than myself to help me do this in a studio, in a lab, to make sure everything is perfect and the way it needs to be. Let's do that. Maybe I could do that in South Dakota for the X-Fest that's coming up here in a couple weeks, May 19th through 21st. Be there, be square. So where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. The rods of these giant cylinder-shaped rods that many people have seen, and these rod-shaped UFOs go back thousands of years. I mean, they've got cave paintings that are 27,000 years old, approximately, of these cylinder UFOs. I've seen them twice that I can remember, and it was within a period of a week in Utah. I was spending a couple months out there hanging out with my grandpa. It was before he passed. Had a really good time out there. It was just like divine providence put me there to be able to hang out with him. Just awesome. One day, sorry, whoo, getting a little emotional. One day I was driving out to Logan. I was by myself, and I was on the freeway, and I saw literally this rod UFO that was just like, it was like hanging out there. Okay, so it'd be at about the 10:30, 11 o'clock position, driving, going north on the freeway, the main freeway in Utah. And then the week later, I was heading to Moab, Utah, Four Corners area. It's awesome out there. It's one of my favorite places in the world. And I was with a coworker of mine at the time. We were driving out there and saw it again, approximately the same position. And I said, "Whoa, I wish you would have seen that." And he goes, "What, that rod-shaped UFO up there?" I said, "You saw it too?" He's like, "Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool." So confirmation on the second one. I thought I was just losing my mind or just seeing something, but he saw it too. And during that same trip, during that month or so that I was out there, it was actually a total of 2 months. I was out there for a month, came back for a week, then went back out there for another month. And I had gone to Skinwalker Ranch. I had gone to Dulce, New Mexico. I had gone to the Dugway area, which some people consider the Shadow Area 51. And I did some serious exploring outside of the mountain ranges. I went and visited every part of Utah. I mean, I'm talking the Salt Flats, middle of nowhere, the Pilot Mountains, every corner. And so I was wondering, I thought about that experience, because there's one other experience I had where I think I saw a UFO that shook me to the core. And it was either that same night/morning, the next morning, or the morning after that. There was this weird sound over my house that was like this vibrational sound, and you could feel it, like your whole body's like this, woo, 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 woo. And went outside, nobody's mowing the lawn, the air conditioning's not on, and nothing's around, nobody's up that I could see, or at least outside of their house, because it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, like 3:50 range, 3:50 to around 4 o'clock in the morning. And, so just real bizarre. But the 2 nights prior to that, or the night prior to that, when I saw the UFO, I even started filming it, but my phone didn't pick it up. You could hear me in the background going, "Whoa, what is that? That's so cool." And it was essentially, the best way to describe it would be, and maybe it was just a bunch of birds. Okay, maybe that's what it was. I mean, it could have been. But here's the bizarre thing, is there was a whole bunch of them, and so it looked like a flock of birds, but then they would all go into just one entity. So it'd be like, and then they kept doing it. And they were doing like these weird cycles and moves and stuff like that, and they kept going back into one. And so if that wasn't bizarre enough, then it was, like I said, just literally the next day or the day after that I had that weird sound that was going on. So it seems like the more you really start to dig into these things, oftentimes, if you need some confirmation to, just make sure you're not completely going crazy, or maybe it's confirmation that you are completely crazy. It seems like those synchronicities happen. So what's your experiences? I've had some people leave little bits and pieces in the comment section about their abduction experiences. Some people have great experiences. Some people have horrific experiences. And that makes me feel that there's multiple factions out there playing with the gene pool of human. Yeah, it was a really cool experience out there in Utah, because I didn't get bad vibes when I saw that rod-shaped UFO either time. And I don't think my coworker did either because he didn't seem spooked out. He thought it was pretty cool too. I've talked to other people about those before, and they say that they're bad, that they're real negative. And then I started thinking about the Daryl Sims interview that I did most recently when he was talking about these ships that they have images of. Daryl Sims calls himself the alien hunter because he's been involved with abduction cases and regression and hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming for years. I mean, talking even chip implant removals. And, he doesn't think they're good at all. He feels that they are extremely bad, and he feels that they're clones. And he talks about how they're cloned in spaceships and stuff like that. So I wonder if these giant cylinder ships that we see, they could be so large that you could have entire, not only communities, but ecosystems inside of these ships. It's fascinating. It's incredible. Question everything. LeakProject.com. Be the change you want to see. Doing a whole bunch of research of specific authors because that way I can either confirm or, I confirm either way if what they're saying is legit based upon my own research. And I don't agree with everybody 100% of the time ever. I will tell you this, though. David Icke has written about things in the past that have shook me to the core. Like if you've ever read his book, The Biggest Secret, that was one of the books that came out in the late 80s, or I'm sorry, the late 90s, when the internet, wow, this is breaking news. This is literally hot off the press, and you can read about this if you go to Building a Better World News or BAB News, BABWnews.com. Huge Saturn discovery shocks scientists, and it confirms what I've been thinking all along. Here we go. The incredibly close picture of a massive hurricane-like storm taken from just over 1,900 miles away from Saturn's surface has been overshadowed by a new discovery on the program. And they're from like Greek era, yet they're still so twisted that I don't even want to put them on the screen. I mean, Kronos is like eating his child. There's one where he's biting his head off, and it's just twisted. And then you've got the Cult of Saturn, the Black Cube, and I haven't read David Icke's work about the rings of Saturn. However, I've heard people talk about it, and there might be something to it. That's one thing. I like to do my own research before I start about the planet's rings. So what is that new discovery, folks? Well, that new discovery is they found nothing in between the actual rings of Saturn. No matter, nothing, nada, blank. The rings of Saturn, the ring makers of Saturn, there's something to it. There's some type of vibrational frequency or harmonious energies, whether for good or bad, that are being like emitted through the entire solar system from that one planet. Saturn is such a mysterious planet, and a lot of people say it was once a star. Maybe the rings around Saturn somehow prevent I don't know, it's like some type of prison matrix or something. Maybe it's a construction of conscious imprisonment. Now, look at the Greek mythos of Kronos. Talk about scary. I mean, you're talking a Greek god that there's multiple images. I was thinking about sharing some of those